Hi, everyone. If you're taking AP English Literature, you're in the right place. I am John from Marco Learning. This is Heather from Marco Learning. Heather, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, and yourself?
Great. I'm super excited. Tomorrow is the first day of AP, digital AP exams, an exciting moment in the history of the world because last year's AP exams were not full length. This year's are. And so what I'm going to do, everyone, real quick, I'm going to share my screen and show you a couple of resources that you can all use in this last second moment to get yourselves ready. So the first thing I'm going to show off to you is our ultimate guide to the digital AP exams. And this is linked in the description. You see this very happy person taking a digital AP exam. The Apple symbol has been removed. It's all here. We provided an update here about the exams that's very important for you, notably that some exams, some of the other ones you may be taking, have been modified as of April 8th in their digital form. And we have an exam formats guide to break that down. We also link to the College Board software, which you needed to have downloaded by now, I think, right? One day before. We have a video here on how to ace the digital AP exams. Definitely, it's too late for the study plan thing, but I want to point your attention here, everyone, at the bottom of this article that we have provided. We have 4 tips for how to deal with this exam, including stuff that Heather and I are going to talk about in just a few minutes about moving back and forth on questions, on the annotation tool, which is super interesting. Actually, true story, everyone. Heather Garcia, I met at the AP annual conference in Orlando, Florida, and she was presenting on a special way that she guides AP English students to mark up a text. Well, that is not very helpful tomorrow because the digital software has its own annotation tool that many students are finding not super useful. So that's something for you to think about and practice with potentially tonight. We talk a little bit in here about typing, which is going to be an interesting dynamic. And we also talk about time management. Time management is incredibly important on this exam because you're locked into various parts. Heather's going to walk you through some of those tips. Now, one other thing I want to point out to you all is we have an AP Lit study guide pack that breaks down each part of the exam, including multiple choice, free response. The night before AP English Lit, you are not going to radically transform your score. Instead, you're going to hang out with us. You're going to press that like button, subscribe, and you're going to get some tips for how to think through your performance tomorrow, right? Your goal is not about memorizing 50 key terms. It's not about getting the secret that's going to take you from a 2 to a 4 on this exam. It's instead about thinking through, imagining your day tomorrow so that it goes really well. Heather, in fact, I'll turn it over to you. What are some of the things we're going to go over tonight for all the AP English Lit students here?
So it's really important that we understand some of the rules behind this digital testing world. We're going to look at actually the test that kids took on May 5th, because what better way to kind of wrap your head around how this test is going to look than look at one that was given just a couple weeks ago. And then I just have some multiple choice tips and some writing tips, just nothing earth shattering, just nice reminders as you dive into a potentially, I don't want to say stressful test, but, just nice little reminders as you dive into this excitement.
Yes, and Heather, I don't know if you have the YouTube platform open on your screen. I can share with you some of the questions as we go through. I'll interrupt and chime in because we're already getting some great feedback, some great questions. Some people have downloaded the digital software already, and we're going through sample questions. And Brian is freaking out. Chelsea's freaking out. Everyone, you're going to go into the chat right now, and you're going to type in, I am not freaking out. Heather, I'm going to do it right now for us, Heather, as Marco Learning. I am not freaking out.
Speak positivity into the universe, friends.
Exactly. That's right, guys. So we are here to help you. Remember that we've got all the resources linked in the description. As you have questions, post them in, and I'll just interrupt Heather occasionally. And we're here to serve you guys and help you. So Heather, I'll let you share your screen. I'm going to jump into the chat, and people are going to keep typing in, I'm not freaking out.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, they're literally all typing.
Oh, good for them. All right, am I sharing successfully? Fantastic. Perfect. All right, guys, I am hoping that you are ready for this. I am going to, my little self is right above, there we go. I was right in front of the middle of my screen here. I cannot believe that the test is tomorrow, and thankfully it is not at 8 a.m. because you are awake. If you are, it's 9 o'clock at night, you should be in bed, but the test is at noon Eastern time. So we've got a little bit of time in the morning to kind of dive through this. There are some fundamental differences between a paper and a digital test, and that's something that I really want to make sure that we're talking about, because if you've been an AP student for the past couple years, you're used to, other than last year, traditional paper pencil tests. And I think even leading into this year, some of us were prepping our kids for that paper pencil experience before College Board announced that they were going to be going digital again. So it's important to note that the multiple choice didn't change its format, right? We still have the same amount of passages, the same amount of questions. We didn't undergo a radical redesign. However, when you are used to taking multiple choice passages, whether it's in AP Classroom or on paper, you're used to seeing all of the questions kind of at once for your passage, right? So you read the passage and you've got all those questions there, and you can kind of get a feel for what's happening in the passage from the questions if you preview them in advance. So I'm reading through the questions and I get to number 7. It's like, talk to us about the tone of hope. And you're like, oh, I better be looking for the hope in this passage. So if you can't preview those questions, that means that you need, for this test, to focus on one at a time. Because look at what's on the screen here. I clipped this straight from College Board. Students, if they skip ahead, will not be able to go back on the multiple choice. You see one question at a time. That's it. If you move forward to preview those questions, you have forfeited your right to answer the ones that came previously. And you don't want to do that. You don't have that much wiggle room in your score, right? We want to make sure that you are answering every question carefully and thoughtfully. So you get one little question on your screen, you're going to preview it, you're going to read your poem or your passage, and then you're going to answer your question, and then you get to move on. And that's kind of a beautiful thing, because you're not going to be caught in the trap of thinking, man, should I go back and answer question 1 differently? Oh gosh, what if it was C and not E? You don't have that choice. It's done. You're just looking forward. You're not even looking backwards anymore. And this is from College Board's study guide, or the test preparation guide as well. And I know it's AP biology, but this is the tool they gave us. So you can see how the question will be on one side. So just imagine that it's a poem or a piece excerpt from a drama or a novel. And then you have that one question there beside it. And you can see your timer at the top that gives you an overall time for the multiple choice, which we know will be 60 minutes for the AP Lit multiple choice. And then you can preview your question, and then you'll hit next and it'll give you a warning like, are you sure you want to go on? And then you click yes, hopefully, because you're ready to move on. So there is no bubble sheet. You don't have to worry about coordinating your numbers and your bubbles, but you do need to make sure that you don't hit next until you're ready. And then that break in between sections. This break concerns me. So you're going to sit for an hour and take 55 multiple choice questions-ish, right? Because sometimes it's 52, sometimes it's 55, right? So about 5 passages, a mixture between poetry, prose, an excerpt maybe from some drama, right? So that's going to be the multiple choice. Then you're going to get a 20-minute break. Here's what you're not allowed to do. You are not allowed to leave and go to McDonald's and pick up chicken nuggets. You are not allowed to go cook steak. You are allowed to go get a quick granola bar and a drink of water, get yourself into some sunlight, stand by a window, or look out at, not at the sun, but at some nature. You're a plant, right? We're just big human plants. Get yourself some air and some water, come back to your screen. Don't go far. Don't take a nap. Don't get on internet or social media. Don't start cruising the reels on Instagram. Stay focused and in the moment, because 20 minutes is a long time to get distracted, and you don't want to get distracted. You need to kind of stay in the zone. And then it's important to note that time is going to resume automatically, whether you're sitting at your computer or not. College Board's not waiting for you to come back from I don't even know, whatever you went and did, and hitting start. Like, it's hitting start without you. So make sure that during that 20-minute break that you are kind of back and ready to roll. Maybe you are kind of reviewing through one of the novels if you're at home that you had prepared and that you've read, and you're just kind of refreshing yourself on how to, I don't know, spell Okonkwo's name before you dive into this, whatever it is that you're doing. If you're at a school, I'm sure that they will instruct you how to use your 20 minutes during this digital test, but I'm certain that they're not going to let you go far. So just keep in mind that this timing exists, and remember that I'm worried that you're going to get distracted. So stay focused and don't communicate with your teacher. Don't reach out with a text and be like, help me, because they're going to say no, right? And then you're going to be mad at them. So just don't even try to reach out to your teacher. It's not allowed. Okay, so that is looking at the test, kind of like a big overhead view. And now, John, do we have questions? I saw your little face pop back up.
Yes, my big face has popped back up real quick. I just wanted to say a couple things about the chat real quick. We're getting a ton of great questions and comments, some of which are about like, are there going to be cameras and photo ID in me? Like, no, that is no longer required. But Heather, you've pointed out something extremely important about that 20-minute break, about the whole experience of going through the digital test. And I think it's really important that you be thinking about, everyone, as you're watching Heather guide you through multiple choice, as we glance over these 2021 free response questions, I want you to go through the process of imagining that experience tomorrow. You're sitting down at your computer, you're downloading it. If you have not yet downloaded the software, real quick, I'm just going to share my screen and remind people of some of the things that are here. So a couple things, again, in this article that I've pinned to the top of our chat, it's going to answer a lot of your questions. You can download the College Board software here. You can check it all out, make sure that you're in the right place. There's a lot of great answers to your questions here. We've been joined in the chat, by the way, Heather, by Tim Freitas from the Garden of English, an amazing channel. They just went live for AP English Lit there. So check that out. And I also had some questions about our study guide pack, which is here right on the page that I've linked to in the description, as well as, and you can just see this on our page here, our free full-length practice test. People want to practice multiple choice. We've got a whole test with explanations for you. So think judiciously, everyone, about how you're going to try to prepare tonight. You're not going to do 93 hours of work. You're going to grab one little thing at a time. And the one thing that Heather's going to grab right now for us is that multiple choice. So Heather, I'll let you share your screen again and guide us through this multiple choice. Yeah, and one other question too, I'm just getting real quick, that I'll mention is people are asking about notes. Okay, you cannot officially use notes on this exam. Also, they're not going to help you, bro. Like, you focus on, it's an open book test already because you have the passage on the left and the questions on the right, because there's a poem that you could look at 50 other poems, but you got to analyze the one they throw at you, right? So pay very close attention to the test in front of you, not to other stuff on your desk, to music, to your doggy, your little sister. Get them out of the way, push them all out, and focus on what you have to do. So Heather, I'll turn it back over to you.
Right, eliminating those distractions. I feel like especially during the multiple choice, because that is so important. If you can find a way to get all of those extra bodies out of your way while you're testing, it helps to clear your desk. I know that I think better with a clear space, like a physical space around me. So if you are at the dining room table, you just kind of push all the stuff to the side. If your dining room table is anything like mine at this moment, there's a stack of laundry waiting to be folded, just shove it to the side, right? Move it over. So a clear space and a clear mind really help diving into this, especially with the multiple choice, because the multiple choice can be challenging. They're usually pulling from older passages. The questions, of course, are pretty intense, and we just want to make sure that you are getting into it with the best mindset that you can. It's not letting me. There we go. So here are some tips. One, this is not a 100% kind of test. You guys are AP kids. Chances are you're pretty highly motivated to get A's. Just a hunch. This test is not like a final exam for your class. This test isn't a midterm exam. College Board doesn't expect 100%. Nobody is expecting 100% of you. Take that pressure off. because if you're getting 100% on this multiple choice test, I'm pretty sure you're a special brand of alien that I'm absolutely in love with, right? Absolutely not expected, especially in a time setting. Take that pressure off. College Board's happy, and you can get an amazing score if you're getting 70% of these right. So I think that setting that expectation at the beginning and reminding yourself when you get to a really hard question, you're like, what the heck is this? It's okay. Because you know what? Kids across the nation are looking at their computer screens going, what the heck is this? So you can just move on. And the next question might be better, might be a little worse. And then you have the same experience and you go, what the heck is this? And you imagine everyone else in your head saying it, and then you move on, right? You never want to get stuck. And then each question is weighted exactly the same. This isn't a test where the really hard questions are worth 22 points and the easy questions are worth 1. No, they're all weighted the same. So when you get to a question that you're like, yes, I nailed it, praise yourself, get excited, and move on to the next one. Because you know what? That hard one that you may or may not have gotten right is just as many points as the one that you did get right. And that is fantastic. So celebrate your wins. Don't freak out if you get a hard question, and try to narrow down your choices, right? Process of elimination. Get it down to 1 or 2, preferably 1, but if you get it down to 2, just pick the best one and move on. Don't linger. You don't have time for that. And always read those questions before you dive into the passage. The beauty of College Board is that the questions will usually kind of mirror the passage as it works through chronologically. So guess what? You're in question 1, it's probably going to ask you about the beginning of the poem. Question 2, it's going to come a little bit after that. So as you read the questions first, it can give you a hint as to what's happening in the poem or the passage or whatever it is. Now, in the study guide pack that John was showing you, there is a study guide about multiple choice questions. And this, I literally just snipped straight from that study guide because this is probably one of my favorite charts that we've created. It is really helpful to try to think like a test writer when you're diving into some of these multiple choice questions. So the test writers aren't, look at that, as they're not terribly creative when it comes to the wrong answers. So it helps to be able to kind of narrow down and kind of get rid of some of these choices. So if they're offering you an option that is just way too literal, right? Like it is a word for word recitation of the passage, or it's taking something from the passage and just not putting it in the context of the question, right? It's just literally pulling from the passage. That's probably not right. Just because the individual words are in the passage doesn't mean that it's meeting the spirit of the question. Recycled language is one that I see often because they'll pull quotes right from the passage. You're like, yes, I remember reading about the blue truck driving down the dusty road. Okay, so yeah, that was in there. But if it doesn't match the idea of the question, again, it's just recycled language. They're trying to trick you. They're trying to be like, hey, you remembered this. Is it right? They want to make sure that you're being discerning in your answer choices. Or they'll throw answers out there that are partly true, but partly not. And if even just a small bit of that question is not right, or that answer option is not right, the answer is not right. Like you can't choose it. So you need to pick something different. You have to make sure that every bit of that answer option could potentially be accurate. Otherwise, it's out. And then extreme language, anything that's done in absolutes, always, nevers, onlys, firsts, those are not usually the correct answer, right? Because nothing's ever in absolutes. So there's always going to be an answer that's just super obviously wrong, 2 that are kind of right, 1 that's technically correct, but probably a little too literal, and then the one that's going to be the most correct. And we just want to get ourselves to a point where we're picking out that one that's most correct. And then, of course, this is just a nice little screenshot of where you can find that little graphic in the study guide pack, because I'm telling you, there are some gems in that study guide pack. And I am not just telling you that because I wrote some of them. Like there's some good stuff in there. All right. On the AP Literature digital exam, the free response questions are going to follow the exact same order that they appear in all of the other tests, right? So you're going to dive into poetry and then prose and then the open response. And that's important because some of the other tests have changed the structure of how they're operating, and they did not do that for us, and I am eternally grateful. The concern here again is that if you skip ahead to look at the questions, you will not be able to go back, and you only get 3, right? You get 3 essays. And if you look at the poem and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, I want to look at the prose, and you move on to the prose, guess who doesn't get to go back and do the poetry? You've got to go in order. When you get to the poem, I don't care how scary it is, you take a minute, you recollect yourself, you read that prompt again, you read the poem as many times as you need, and then you dive into that essay. Do not try to skip ahead. You will lose your opportunity to answer it. If I could say this more clearly, I would. If I had like big flashing arrows pointing to like this comment, don't skip ahead. Okay? It's important. Now, this is just a quick screen grab of what it's going to look like when you dive into that writing section. So you've had your multiple choice test, 60 minutes, it's behind you. You took your 20-minute break. You got a granola bar, some water, and some sunshine. And now you're sitting down and you're opening up your first test. We know we're going to have 2 hours, and you have to navigate your time. There will not be a little thing that says you should move on to question 2. You should move on to question 3. Nope. You navigate your own time. So the timer is at the top. I recommend you not hide it because you've got to manage your time between the 3 essays. So keep that timer up there unless it's freaking you out, like giving you anxiety, in which case hide it, but check on it frequently. So you're going to have the passage at the side along with the prompt, and that's going to kind of stay there so that you can see it, and you scroll up and down so that you can go back and, narrow in on the passage parts that you need. And then you're going to type right in that itty bitty little box. Now, if your screen is bigger, the box will be bigger. Remember, this is a screenshot, but look at what options you have available to you. You can make things in bold, you can underline, or you can put things in italics. That's good for titles. Probably avoid it for emphasis, right? We don't need to just be like shouting at the AP readers that you have a point, right? They'll get it. You do have the copy and paste button in here, copy, cut, and paste. It only works in this little box. You cannot type it in a Google Doc and copy and paste it into this. It will not work. You will waste your time. Don't try. You must do your typing in this tiny little box. Otherwise, it will not work. I can't express that enough. This is not like last year's test. Last year's test, you could copy it and paste it from a Google Doc or a Word document and put it in here. You cannot do that this year. So just please, please, please type in this cute little box that they have provided for you, right? Stay on track. One of the things that you do have the option of doing is annotating within this screen. I don't recommend like typing into this when you have notes. I think that this annotation tool is really great for highlighting lines that you'll want to bring in later for analysis. I think that that highlighting tool could be really helpful if you have a point in particular that you kind of left off at because you wanted to write a paragraph, then you have to go back to that point to keep reading, right? So that annotation tool could be really great for highlighting. I am not a fan of it for actually typing in the document and kind of snagging your ideas there. I just think that it could be time consuming. I'd rather see you typing in your passage than typing notes. Now, with that said, there are a couple of tools. So here's the annotating tool that I was just talking about. But you can create for yourself a little annotation chart if you're doing this online. So if you have the ability to have scratch paper with you, you can just kind of draw something that looks similar to this. You put your thesis statement at the top, just kind of jot down a line number, a quick couple words about what's happening, and then why it's happening, right? Focus on that authorial intent. Don't linger here long. This is just a way for you to kind of organize your ideas while you are taking the test, if you have a piece of scratch paper near you. This isn't notes. This isn't in any way cheating. It's just putting your thoughts on paper in a way that's a little bit more organized. And I always recommend keeping the thesis kind of anchored on whatever paper you're operating with, whether it's at the very first thing you see on your typed document or you have it written on a piece of paper, because that thesis statement should be the point that you are driving home. Every single paragraph, every point you make should go back to that thesis. Because guess what? If your thesis is good, it's going to answer the prompt. And every time you can tie that question or that prompt into your essay, you are scoring some points with the readers. Prove to us that you understand what the question is asking. And then this is an option, right? This essay writing checklist. So just a quick glimpse of what needs to happen at the end of every essay, right? So you wrote your essay, you're like, yes, I did it. Let's move on to the next one. But first, right, let's look at my intro. Do I have a thesis that's defensible? Okay. Did I bring the theme in early? Worst case scenario, you spend way too much time on essay 1, way too much time on essay 2, and you get to essay 3, which is my favorite essay of all time, where you get to bring in the books that you want to write about, and you run out of time because you didn't manage your time well. If you bring your theme in early on in your essay, then you don't have to worry so much about the readers feeling like you didn't get it. You didn't get the point. You didn't get that bigger picture. Bring it in early. You're not trying to hide anything from them. There's no big reveals at the end. Just dive into the meat early. And I recommend that for all 3 essays. Body paragraphs, you should have, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, depending on the length of your paragraphs. If you're typing, chances are you're going to be able to write more. So I'm thinking 3 or 4 maybe. But you want clear transitional phrases and sentences. You want to smoothly integrate those quotations and make sure that every single bit of commentary ties back to that thesis, ties back to that overall purpose of the text, ties back to the prompt. Make 2 or 3 distinct points in each paragraph. If my daughter comes to me telling me she needs to stay home because she's sick and all I see is 1 sneeze, girl, you're going to school. You see a sneeze and maybe like, I don't know, a fever, yeah, you're staying home because, right, it's a pandemic. But 1 sneeze, that just means I need dust. You're good, right? We need 2 or 3 distinct points per paragraph. You got to prove your point, right? 1 point isn't going to do it. You need more. Closing, tie back to a thesis, right? Bring it back. Don't state it word for word. That's lame, but try to connect it to that larger meaning and theme. And then as you're discussing the author's purpose, try to talk about what the author is doing. The author is highlighting this character in order to emphasize this point that connects to the theme. The author juxtaposes these 2 characters and the reactions to love because they want us to see how those foils, I don't know, play out later in the text. I'm thinking Romeo and Mercutio. I don't know. It's late. Try to keep the verbs that you're talking about focused on the author more so than the character, because authorial intent is going to be kind of at the heart of all of these passages, more so than what did the character do. That's kind of a trick to get you into plot summary, and you want to avoid that. So try to focus on the author, not what the character is doing. And so this is just straight from College Board, reminding you that you have to type your answers right in that little box and that you're in lockdown mode, so you will not be able to go to other typing avenues, I don't know, platforms. And I would like to dive into the prompts that were given in May. Yep, I knew John was going to pop in. I was like, here we go. It's a transition. Here he comes.
We go. There's a dog on the screen. I got to come in here real quick. Hey, everyone. It's John from Marco Learning. We've had a lot of people join us, Heather. Lots of amazing questions. Thank you all for being such a great group. I wanted to address a few of these questions now and make sure that I'm able to help you guys out with some of this content. What Heather's just been going over is invaluable. It's the stuff that really matters, the substance of what that experience is like. How you gave us practical tips for all the things that we want to do. We've got a lot. Okay, there's some people who are nervous. A couple questions we're also getting here. I'm just looking at this. There's a lot of questions. A couple questions about is everyone else nervous? No one is nervous. And Doggo with Glasses, by the way, is a reminder that maybe I should bring Marco on here later. I'm going to share my screen real quick and just show you all some tools that can answer your questions for you. So one thing, we've had questions, what's the sophistication point? How do I write a thesis? Can you go over the rubric? No, we have a whole playlist with all this stuff. We have a walkthrough of the multiple choice. We actually have our previous live stream for the paper and pencil exam. We have my poetry walkthrough AP English Lit Q1 essay. We have actually, Heather, your previous streams walking us through tips of poetry. Tip for all of you tonight, and I know, Heather, you're going to agree with me. Don't study 45 things. Study 1. Pick poetry and just spend some time there. Pick the digital platform. Spend some time there. Don't focus on 53 things. I know we got some Californians. Heather, you're in Florida. I'm in New Jersey. We're East Coast people. It's past our bedtimes. My Californians and my Hawaiians have a little bit more time to prepare. Of course, remember everyone, digital AP exams will start at the exact same time worldwide. So it's one of these unusual things. Everyone's computer will bring them into a lockdown mode. It's not the lockdown browser you use from school, but it's going to lock you in. Heather, I got a bunch of questions about the software itself. So in addition to walking people through that in some of these videos, like here's me and my dog Marco walking people through that software, I want to point out that in the guide that you've been paraphrasing from and drawing from, which I've linked to in the chat, we have all those links for you. But the College Board has given us answers to these questions about what the software looks like. So right after this video, go download this stuff. You can see exactly where, for example, Heather, people were asking about copy and paste. That's where that you can actually see what this looks like. We've been talking about the timer. There it is at the top of the screen. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And as I've also linked to before, our practice test with multiple choice, you want to do a 1 hour time to multiple choice, we have that for you. We also have, Heather, I got a bunch of questions about this, which is how many different points do I need on each part of this exam? So like, let's just say, and here I'll just put my email in. This John and Margo Learning here. Let's just say I get 40 multiple choice correct. And each of the essays is graded 0 to 6. I get 4 on those. How will I do? That's a pretty good AP score, right? That's going to get me right around a 4.
Perfect.
And as I go back, I can go back and look at it again and try this with some different numbers. 40 out of 55 is not the most amazing performance in the world, and it gets me a 4, you know? So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. And I do have some, okay, there's a lot of East Coast, West Coast battles happening now in the chat. I should not have brought that up. If you are enjoying this video, press that like button, subscribe to our channel. Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm very excited. You're going to be sharing for us the 2021 AP exams. This is the first time, this is the paper and pencil exams. This is the first time ever that hundreds of thousands of students can look at the full free response questions that were made available already. So let's take a look at that and see what we saw a couple weeks ago on the real AP Lit exam.
All right. All right, so now we are back in here, and I think that it is just, I was nervous that College Board wasn't going to post these, and absolutely thrilled when I saw that they came live. Okay, so this does come from the test that just came out on May 5th. Like seriously, College Board is amazing. Now let's look at this first question, right? So we know that it's 2 hours. We know there's 3 questions. We're going to dive into the first one. And in the poem, The Man with the Saxophone, that was published in 1985, the speaker encounters a man playing a saxophone. Read the poem carefully. Then in a well-written essay, analyze how, I can't pronounce this name, I'm so sorry, uses literary elements and techniques to convey the complexity of the speaker's encounter with the saxophone player at that particular time and place, right? So now let's look at this prompt. So we need to look at the literary elements and techniques, okay, to convey the complexity is showing up in all the prompts, by the way, the complexity of the speaker's encounter with the saxophone player at that particular time and place. So we are looking at complexity. We're looking at characterization. We're looking at setting and how those all intersect. Now, one of the things that you're going to want to keep in mind is we've got these bullet points that come at the end. This is called stable wording. And once you read through them and you know what they're asking, there's something that you can kind of just move past a little bit because they're going to be the same in all of them. So we're going to spend a minute here because I would rather front load this for you, make sure you understand what's coming in those bullet points so that on test day, those are just kind of internalized and they're not something that's going to take up your time. So in your response, these are the things you should do. Do the following. Respond to the prompt of the thesis that presents a defensible interpretation. That means you're doing more than summarizing. That means that you are giving me some meat in that thesis statement that I can say, yes, you're absolutely right, or I don't agree with you, but keep going. Let me see what you have to say. Select and use evidence to support your line of reasoning. You can't just speak in broad generalities. College Board is saying, pull evidence, okay? Explain how the evidence supports your line of reasoning. We can't predict what's in your brain. We can't follow what's not on paper. So if you think that we're following you, but you didn't spell it out, go back and spell it out. And then use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. Fine. Okay. Now I know that you are typing in a tiny little box that does not have the benefit of Grammarly or spell check or grammar check. So that means that you're going to need to build in for yourself a couple minutes at the end of the typing to go back through and fix some of those easy mistakes, because I understand that on the rubric, it doesn't say anything about grammar and punctuation as far as it actually cutting you points. But keep in mind who your audience is. You're writing for a bunch of English teachers. We are super duper nerdy about following the grammar. And if you haven't capitalized a single I in your entire essay, I promise you I will notice. I will try not to, but I will notice. And so will any other reader, because that's just how we're programmed. It makes us a little twitchy. So if you can go back through and fix those things quickly at the end without taking a ton of time, I think that would be super. So now we're narrowing in kind of on this passage here. We're looking at the complexity of the speaker's encounter with the saxophone player at that particular time and place. And now we get into the poem. Not incredibly long, not incredibly complex. It's modern. It's from 1985, and it's delightful. It is an incredibly approachable poem. What I'm not going to do is steal the opportunity for you or from you of you going in and looking at this passage on your own. So I'm going to tell you that right away we have New York 5 a.m., right? Very first line of the poem. Let's back it up. They're asking us to talk about the complexity of the speaker's encounter with the saxophone player at that particular time and place. If they're going to tell us that this is taking place at New York at 5 a.m., the sidewalks are empty, chances are that's the setting we should be talking about. Why is it important that it's New York? Why is it important that it's 5 a.m.? Why are the sidewalks empty? Chances are everybody just hasn't gotten up and gone to work yet, right? Everyone's still kind of at home, still kind of getting themselves ready for the day. Only the steam is pouring from the manhole covers that seems alive. So as I amble from shop window to shop window, sometimes stopping to stare, sometimes not, right? When you go through this poem, because I'm going to encourage you to go onto College Board's website and go through this poem, read it once and just enjoy the experience. And then read it again and think, what's so important about New York at 5 a.m.? Then read through it again and think, what is so important about this encounter that's happening between this man and this saxophone player? And then read through it again and say, okay, how is the author giving me this experience of this encounter? What are they doing in here? Are they doing it through imagery? Are they doing it through sound? Are they doing it through rhythm, right? Look at how this poem kind of snakes its way through, almost like mist coming out of a manhole cover, right? Like, look at the structure of the poem. Look at the word choices. Try to envision what the author did in order to give you that experience, right? That's how you approach this poem. Question 2, right? So you read the poem, you kind of jot down a quick thesis, you get yourselves a little pre-writing. Maybe you write the essay tonight, maybe you don't. Maybe all you do is enjoy that poem and have that pre-writing moment, and then you move on, right? Because we don't have to write essays at, I don't know, what time is it, 9:40 at night? We don't have to write essays. We have a test tomorrow, we're gonna write plenty. Question 2, suggested time, 40 minutes. This is a third of your essay score. So you just had a third of it behind you. You can't go back to that essay. Once you are done with question 1, it is behind you. It lives there now. It is its own finished entity. Don't think about it. You can't change it. I don't care if you thought of something super amazing that you want to end and add into the ending, and you're in the middle of question 3. Oh, well, it's done. It's off in cyberworld. Move on. Focus on what you can change. Focus on the question you are currently on. Be present in the moment. So now let's look at question 2. The following excerpts from Tim Winton's novel Breath, published in 2008, another modern passage. Thank you, College Board. In this passage, the main character, Bruce Pike, recalls an incident at a nearby river. Read the passage carefully. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze how Winton uses literary elements and techniques to represent the complex response of the narrator to the incident at the riverbank. I told you complexity shows up again. So we have a character, there's an incident at a riverbank. We need to talk about how the author uses these techniques to represent the complex response. Well, guess what you have to do in your thesis? You have to explain to me what that complex response is. If all you say is Winton uses literary elements and techniques to represent the complex response that the narrator had to the incident at the riverbank, you didn't earn a thesis point. All you've done is restate the question. That doesn't earn you anything. If you say the narrator, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but if you say that the protagonist remembers the incident at the riverbank and recalls it with a mixed feeling of this and this, right? Because complexity requires some opposing forces. They feel this, but they also feel this. They feel this, yet this stops them, right? That complexity. If you can say that, then now you're getting a thesis point, and now your essay has something to kind of latch on to. That stable wording there is exactly the same as it was in the last question. I'm going to go over it for you again, just so that you don't have to on test day. In your response, you should do the following. Respond to the prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible interpretation. Select and use evidence to support your line of reasoning. Explain how the evidence supports your line of reasoning, and use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. 4 things that you have to remember. But for this essay, let's look at how long this passage is. So question 2, literary elements and techniques to present the complex response of the narrator to the incident at the riverbank. Here it is. It's kind of long. And if you notice, there is some kind of nuanced language in here that requires the footnotes. So just in paragraph 2, you have, he was the publican's son. And I'm like, the publican's, okay. Well, what the heck is that? So you see that little footnote, you go back and you're like, oh, the owner of a pub. Fantastic, right? Use those footnotes if they provide them for you, because honestly, I didn't know what that was. I'm like, I don't know. Did they write books? So anyway, go back. It's the owner of a pub. Who knew? Now, going through this, right, you're going to want to make sure that you're managing your time a little bit, but think about how this will look on a digital exam, right? Think of that kind of endless scrolling for that little half of your screen. You're going to have to get through that whole first column and then keep scrolling for that second column and then keep scrolling for that little bit of the third. Don't get discouraged when you start scrolling through, because, right, nature tendency, you're going to want to see what you have to read. So that little thing is going to pop up. You're going to see half your screen. You're going to start scrolling. Like, how long is this thing? Don't panic. It's going to look like it's a lot, but chances are it's not going to be much more than this. It's just going to be visually intimidating in a digital structure, right? So just kind of keep that in mind as you're going through it. Don't panic at the length, because it's going to look like it's a little wild. So what I'm going to recommend that you do is read through this, right? Read it. What is College Board giving us to look at? I'm telling you, it's actually a really interesting interaction of a kid watching what he thinks is another kid drowning, but not drowning. And the way that the woman on like the bank reacts, like there's a ton of really great reactions to work with here. It's a good passage. You're not going to regret reading it. And now for my last favorite prompt. So we've set question 1 aside, we've set question 2 aside, we've submitted them both. We are now on to question 3. The other 2 are behind us. We have 40 minutes left. We've managed our time well. We have a third of the essay left ahead of us. And now we are on my favorite prompt, which allows me to pull from all of the things that I've read all year long and really show College Board that I know my stuff. Because they can throw things at me that can totally throw me off with the other 2 essays, right? Who knows what they're going to give me? But here, I am the master of this prompt. I don't care what prompt they give me. I know my book. And if you are not feeling super confident about knowing your book, now, tonight, maybe in the morning, is a good opportunity for you to go back and kind of review a couple of scenes from the books that you've read and just kind of refresh yourself on like, what makes this book so great? What scene really kind of hits home the complexity of a character? Because we know College Board loves their complexity, right? Let's look at this prompt. In many works of fiction, houses take on symbolic importance. Such houses may be literal houses or unconventional ones like hotels or hospitals or monasteries or boats. Either from your own reading or from the list below, choose a work of fiction in which a literal or unconventional house serves as a significant symbol. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze how this house contributes to an interpretation of the work as a whole. Do not merely summarize the plot. In your response, you should do the following. Respond to your prompt with a thesis that presents a defensible interpretation. Provide evidence to support your line of reasoning. Explain how the evidence supports your line of reasoning, and use appropriate grammar and punctuation in communicating your argument. All right, we've gotten that standard wording out of the way. Let's dive back into that prompt, okay? The house is going to take on symbolic importance. They've set the stage. We know we're talking about houses serving as symbols. All right. Either from your reading or the list below. I'm going to pause there. You get a list underneath your prompt of all of these potential books that you could write about. These are there in case you panic, right? You get to the prompt, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't read a book ever. I don't know any titles. Of course you've read books. Of course you have titles. But if you panic, here's some things to jog your memory. You are not limited to these books. You could write about any number of things. Life of Pi isn't on here, but you want to tell me that Pi isn't in an unconventional house when he's on that boat? Yeah, of course he is. Write about Life of Pi. It's not on here, but you can write about it anyway, right? You're not limited to this list. It's there if you panic. Okay. So either from your own reading or from the list below, choose a work of fiction in which a literal or unconventional house serves as a significant symbol. That's job number one, right? College Board is telling you right off the bat, that's job number one. You should probably, in your introductory paragraph, establish the title of your work, the author of your work, maybe give me one sentence to summarize the entire plot of the novel, right? You don't get much time to summarize. I'll give you one sentence. That's all you get. And then tell me what the house is and why it's a symbol and what it's a symbol for. That's your introductory paragraph. Just tackle this first job right out of the way. Get that handled. And let me kind of ease your mind here because I'm telling you, you can only give me one sentence of summary. I'm going to tell you why. College Board readers were, first of all, super duper nerdy English people. Like, we are reading essays for fun over the summer, right? We read books. We read lots of books and we read wide varieties of books. Chances are there's going to be a reader who's read the book that you're writing about. But if we haven't and we are unfamiliar, we're going to pass that essay on to somebody else who has read that book. And if we can't find somebody in our like immediate little group who hasn't read it, it's going to go out to a table leader. And if the table leader hasn't read a book, they're going to tap in on all the other hundreds of table leaders. And if they haven't read it, it's going to go up to the ochos. Those are the ones who kind of oversee the table leaders. If they haven't read it, it goes up to the head of the question. If they haven't read it, they'll read your book. Like, I'm not kidding you. Somebody will have read this book. That is why you don't have to spend time summarizing the plot, because summarizing that plot is just eating up time that you could be spending in analysis. We know the story. Okay. Don't spend your time there. All right. So now that I have established the fact that you don't need to summarize the plot, we know what's happening. Let's dive into this. Paragraph 1, you're going to answer that first part of this. Choose a work of fiction in which a literal or unconventional house serves as a significant symbol. Done. We did it in the intro. Now, what do I have to do? In a well-written essay, analyze how this house contributes to an interpretation as a work as a whole. Okay, how does this symbol shape how I see this work? How does this house change the way that this work functions? I drew arrows to the ones I could write about. Now, there's others I could write about in here. I just choose not to, and I'll talk about those as I go. But Beloved, right? If you read Beloved, house 1, 2, 4 is the biggest symbol in the entire, well, one of the biggest symbols in the entire book. It literally embodies like an entire ghost who is a main character of the story. Like, there is some serious weight to that house. The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson. It's spooky, so totally gave me nightmares, by the way. Like, I had legit nightmares from that book. But that house is a character on its own. That house is not only symbolic of like fear itself and like separating people from humanity, but it is its own character. Like, you can write an essay about that house. Jane Eyre, she's got 3 to choose from, right? She goes from the orphanage, she's at her aunt's house, she's at Rochester's house. Like, that house, those houses, depending on which one you choose, can symbolize different things in her life. Notice I'm emphasizing one. She may have 3 houses, but this prompt is asking for a literal or unconventional house that serves as a symbol, not houses and symbols. Don't go wild. You get one. You have to read these prompts carefully. The Secret Garden, right? I'm not talking about the house that she lived in India. I'm not talking about her uncle's house. I'm talking about the garden as a house, right? I'm going to take it to the less, right, obvious, like, house. Okay. Notice I skipped To Kill a Mockingbird. Of course I've read To Kill a Mockingbird. So has every other high schooler in the country. I'm not writing about that one. And the reason is, if everybody's read it, chances are it's not going to create a very interesting or innovative or stand out-ish essay. And I prefer to write about books that are a little less conventional. I like to go off the list every time I can, and To Kill a Mockingbird is just a little too on the list for me. But I'm a brat, so there's that. So Where the Crawdads Sing, love this book. It is so good. I mean, you could talk about any number of the houses that are in there. Wide Sargasso Sea. Okay, nerdy thing here. If you've read Jane Eyre, you are going to love Wide Sargasso Sea because it takes the crazy lady in the attic and gives you her whole backstory and turns it into a post-colonial feminist rant. It's lovely. And then Withering Heights is one of my favorites. There are 2 houses to choose from. Take your pick, but don't do both, right? There are tons of things that you can do in here. And again, you're not limited to this list. So that is important. So quickly, because I know that we are approaching the end of our time, I just want to remind you about some just general writing tips, right? We've looked at what the test was like. We've talked about ways that we could approach these prompts. Well, now let's look at kind of the nitty gritty of writing. So some thesis statement mistakes that you might make, but you probably don't want to. You don't want to write a thesis statement that just summarizes or that doesn't fully address the prompt, right? Because we've got multi-piece prompts and we need to make sure we're addressing them. You also don't want to write a thesis statement that only summarizes the prompt, right? I gave you an example of that and it's not good. So a solid thesis statement is going to address all the portions of the prompt, all of it. It has to be debatable. It has to be specific, right? Don't speak in vague generalities. If they're asking you to define a complexity, you better define the complexity. Don't just say the complexity exists. Always try to include that overarching purpose or some overarching theme. And it can be more than one sentence. It even says it right in the rubric. It can be multiple. You're going to want to try to say like the narrator rather than the main character, because that just sounds a little bit more elementary. As an AP reader last year, I kept reading that this work was confusing or this work was hard to understand. I'm like, oh my gosh, why would you admit that? No, stop it. Say that the work was complex or sophisticated, but don't tell me it was hard. Don't like set me up to think that you're questioning yourself, right? You go into that thing with all the false confidence you can. Also, don't tell me that the author uses diction, because guess what? I'm using diction right now. It's just a fancy word for words. If you tell me I'm using diction or the character's using diction, I'm going to go, yep, they sure did because they were using words. No, you tell me that the author's use of elevated diction served to, I don't know, highlight her highly educated background, whatever. Or if her emotional diction served to, I don't know, illuminate the betrayal that she felt after his actions, right? I don't know. Give me some adjectives, give me some purpose, and then you can talk about diction. And then don't tell me that the imagery paints a picture in the reader's mind, because that's just gross and people don't like to read that. So don't do that. And then you're not going to want to summarize the plot, but you're going to want to kind of have a theme statement in your thesis. Talk about theme whenever you can, the overarching purpose of the piece. And then most of the points are going to be earned in the body of your essay. Intros should be short and sweet. You get 1 point for a thesis statement, which you're going to want. You want that point because that point is going to kind of be the grounding station for the rest of your essay. But you're going to get that 1 point whether you write a killer 3-sentence intro or a 30-sentence intro. So don't waste your time writing a 30-sentence intro. You give them a couple sentences, you make sure your thesis is strong, and you move on, because most of those points are going to be earned in the body paragraphs. You can earn up to 4 points in the body paragraph by elaborating on your ideas and citing evidence. So why wouldn't you spend most of your time there in the body? And then ensure that your thesis does more than just restate the prompt. Make sure that it's incredibly detailed so that those body paragraphs can connect back to it as often as possible. And then your conclusions, guess what? There's no point on the rubric for those, because they can actually just be a couple sentences tacked onto the end of a body paragraph if need be. They don't have to be that short, but they can be. If you're running out of time or you feel like you have nothing else to say, like you've exhausted your ideas, don't just ramble for another 10 minutes because you feel like you have to have a closing. You're not getting any points for it. wrap that sucker up and move on to the next essay. And then let's kind of look at what has worked in the past, because, and you're going to want to dive into this a little bit maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, but on Marco Learning's website, under the free resources, we have articles. And one of our AP Lit teachers, Michelle Lindsay, created this amazing resource. So she wanted to know, okay, what has worked in the past to get kids that sophistication point, that last column in the rubric. We've talked about the thesis, we've talked about the 4 points for the body, but that sophistication piece there at the end, that can be a challenge for students. So what did students do in the past to kind of get those high scoring 8 and 9 scoring essays? So she went back through all of the tests from, I want to say, what was it, 2016 to 2019, and looked at the high scoring essays and created like a matrix to collect the data. So she wanted to know kind of the word counts per paper, but the word counts within the paragraphs. She wanted to know, like, what did these essays do right that wasn't necessarily detailed within the rubric? And then she kind of cross-referenced between all the high scoring essays, made sure that there were commonalities, and she created this beautiful list. And so you can see that most of the intros in these high scoring essays were about 83 to 133 words. The body paragraphs, about 148 to 244. And look at those conclusions, anywhere from 63 words to 116 words. So if you want, it would be really good for you to go onto the Marco Learning website and pull up this article and really spend some time looking at what these essays did well. What did they do? For question 3, look at that last bullet point in the conclusion. The historical context of the book is tied into the overall point presented in the essay. It's tied into the theme in the prompt, which yields the author's purpose, right? You're going to bring in historical context in the opening. It's that 3rd bullet point down in intro, a nod to the historical context. Well, guess what? Cycle back to it in your closing, connect it to the theme of the book, and then this is kind of leading you towards a higher scoring essay, maybe getting you some sophistication points. So she did this for question 3, and then it was met with such great results that she went back and did it for question 1, which is the poetry prompt. There isn't one for question 2 yet, but we do have both of these charts that exist on the Marco Learning website for you for question 1 poetry and question 3. I don't think that you need to go through both of them. Pick the essay that you feel you might struggle with a little bit more. I think most of my students would probably lean towards the poetry, and go back and look and see, like, what did these high scoring essays do to really get that sophistication point? And I know I'm telling you that you can go back and like look at charts and you can kind of brush up and get some ideas, but there really isn't a ton of studying for this test like there is an AP history test or an AP psych test or AP chem. But you do have some opportunities to review your novels, right? Question 3, you can change the way that operates. You can't control what is given to you in multiple choice, right? You can't predict. You can't predict what poem they're going to give you or what prose passage, but you can control your novels. You know which 2 you want to use, and you hopefully have spent some time reviewing them. So think about this as looking outside the text and inside the text. If you're looking outside the text and wanting to kind of get some of that historical context, think about when it was published. What major social events were happening at the time? What political and economic movements were happening at the time? How do these connect to the themes in the novel? If they connect to the themes, fantastic. You've got something really great to go with. If they don't really connect to the themes, then maybe there isn't a ton there that you can work with. But then think about what's happening inside the text that you could maybe review in these last few hours. I think you should sleep tonight, but maybe in the morning. Who are the main characters and what makes them complex? We're seeing from this May 5th test that College Board is all about the complexity. So, okay, let's take that theme and run with it. What's making our characters complex? What's making their relationships with each other complex? How is their relationship to the setting complex, right? Just keep that word in mind. What major themes are explored in the text, and what specific scenes support those themes? Because we know that for question 3, you've really got to dive into those scenes and spend a lot of time kind of extrapolating analysis from those. And then maybe consider committing one short universal quote to memory. Short and sweet. At one point, Heathcliff in Withering Heights just opens a window and screams to the ghost of his dead lover, and he just yells, "Haunt me." And those 2 words for that one sentence that he exclamation marks and screams out into the wind say so much about his state of mind and the relationship he had with Catherine and kind of the future trajectory of the story. And there's a lot to work with just those 2 words. And anybody can memorize 2 words going into a test. Do you have to? No. Will it impress your readers? Yeah. So it's just something to consider. And then I know that there's probably tons of questions in the chat, and I know that some of you are feeling nervous, but I'm going to remind you that you've got this and you are going to be great because you've spent an entire year reading books. You've probably spent time reading books since you were young enough to read books. You know how this works. Don't let the title of AP in front of this test freak you out. You can do this. And my final charge to you is to go to bed, get some sleep. Think about it fresh in the morning. Eat a good breakfast. Don't wear pajamas when you take the test because I'm telling you, your brain works better when it's not in PJs. Put on something with a zipper. Tell your body it's time to get to work. And then drink plenty of water because like I said earlier, we're just kind of big old plants, right? Your brain is going to work best when it's hydrated. Get some sunlight before the test. Get some sunlight during the break. And treat your body well so that your brain can treat you well during the test. And those are my big tips leading you into tonight.
That is amazing advice, Heather. And I just wanted to come on here real quick. Everyone, I'm gonna, some people are like, no, don't go. It is time. It is time, people, for you to begin shifting gears into focusing on how you're gonna study in the next few hours if you have it, if you're in California, and how you're not if you're not in California. So just as a quick reminder, I'm gonna walk you through, I put like 15 links in the description of this video. So if you don't know what's going on or where to go, let me show you. First thing, Ultimate Guide to the 2021 Digital AP Exams has the links of what Heather has been referring to, some of the tips. I actually did a video, not with my dog, but there he is in the thumbnail, on the digital AP exams, walking you through the software, the timing, and all of that, as well as some of those key tips. We have a playlist that is absolutely bigger than anything that you could possibly ingest over the course of the next couple of hours, and you should not. This is a really compelling playlist because we put together content with Heather, with Elena Vernon, with me on each part of the exam. Look at it. There's 42 videos here going through each of the essays. I really recommend these rubric walkthroughs to show you the points. I recommend Heather's lessons on multiple choice and poetry that are really helpful. Check this playlist out. It's there for you. We've got a study guide pack that breaks down each one of these main ideas. Skip over all this stuff. You don't have time for it, but go to these the breakdown of multiple choice that Heather had mentioned, as well as each one of these essays, the poetry and all the rest of them. We have a full-length practice test, which you can use. I recommend, guys, try one passage. Heather mentioned this before about kind of take care of yourself. I will not wear pajamas. In fact, everyone type in the chat, I will not wear pajamas tomorrow. I'm actually going to type that, but I'm going to figure out how I spell it. I will not wear pajamas. I'm going to spell it this way, though it's also spelled this way. And so again, all the links for this are in the description. You can check this out. I'll just pop this here. And I am getting demands for the dog, Heather. We have to stop the presses, stop production. I also put a link to our score predictor to help you understand what's going on there. The free study guides are here. Yes, and people are saying they will not wear pajamas, Heather. You're getting your point across. Also, as you're, if you've got your phone nearby, grab it. Post or go to Marco Learning on Instagram, everyone. We post funny memes of dogs. This is, by the way, answers the question of how the College Board will be spying on you tomorrow. It will not be. There is no camera and no photo ID required. We have all kinds of memes related to, there's my dog, Marco, whom I will go get. And Lang students, all sorts of popular memes and fun information graphics here on this page. And then, Heather, we also have on TikTok, this is actually a video I filmed with my dog, Marco, going through the 2021 AP Lang and Lit free response questions. We went through them both. So check out Marco Learning on Instagram. and on TikTok. And the other thing, again, I'll remind you of here is on the College Board site, you can preview this software some more. So while I go get Marco, Heather, any other final tips for how to use resources? Let's say it is the West Coast and it's 7 o'clock. Which one part of the exam, just personally, would you recommend? And people are staying for the dog. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
While you're thinking of that, let me know in the chat, guys, what part of the exam do you think you're going to focus on if you have time? So I'm going to be back with the big fluffy dog in just a minute.
Honestly, I think my emphasis would be on question 3 with the novels, because that is the one part of the exam that you can really control. You can't control the multiple choice. I think that if that is an area where you are feeling some serious angst and you do a practice session or practice passage, and you do the one on our website where it has the answer explanations for you, you can really learn a lot from just one passage. I don't think you need to beat yourself up and do 5 of them, but that can be a good use of your time just to kind of alleviate some anxiety. But I would really dive into your novels and just make sure that you are fully prepared to talk about all of the different themes and the complexities of relationships. And look at that fluff.
Marco.
Oh, he's the best.
Let me stop the screen share. There he is. So everyone, I'm curious what you all think of Marco. Say hi. He loves you. He's also very tired. Look, Marco, you got your AP Lit exam. You got to go to bed. Buddy. Yeah, he says he's not going to wear pajamas. He's going to study poetry. And that's going to be his approach to doing well in the exam. So guys, best of luck to you all tomorrow. Thank you so much, Heather, for everything you've done for us here at Marco this spring, helping students out for this last second review. Everyone, and there's lots of love in the chat. So yes, anyway, everyone have a great night. Best of luck to you. And we will be hearing from you